Now we're going to talk about a tweet that Ellen Barkin sent. She's, of course, a famous actress. And she was, worried about police brutality. It was a New Year's Day arrests were going on at Zuccotti Park. And she tweeted out, quote, "Just threatened on my street by NYPD. Cop shoved me, both hands, onto sidewalk. Is it a crime to stand in the street in New York? WTF is going on here?" If you don't know, you should ask somebody what that is. But okay, so now we found the video of her being shoved as well. I want to show you that for the context, and then we can talk about it. You know, I have mixed feelings about that, too. First of all, there's been a lot of police brutality against Occupy Wall Street. There's been, 5,837 documented arrests in 105 different cities. Whether all those people deserve it, let alone how they got arrested, the pepper spray that we've seen over and over again, whether it's in Berkeley or New York, et cetera. On the other hand, you know, as I watch that video, I get a sense of privilege a little bit from Ellen Barkin. I mean, she's on our side. I want to say nice things, but can you imagine a cop pushes a young black guy a little bit? He says, "Get your motherfucking hands off me." Now, what do you think goes down next, Keith?
Well, I just want to say that, like, what happened to her for a celebrity, that was like being beaten by 10 cops, like for your average black man. So I am kind of on her side. What she says in here is, the NYPD cop shoved me, both hands, onto sidewalk. And that video says that. And everyone assumed that she went down to the ground. But she literally was pushed onto a sidewalk. I'm not saying that, you know, I'm saying she could have been more clear about it. I think she may have been purposely vague to enhance the drama of it. But it is a joke. I'm half joking about the whole celebrity thing. That's never going to happen, where a celebrity gets really manhandled by the police. You know,
right? But I mean, Frank, doesn't that show you how crazy and perverse our society is? And in fact, a lot of people are just paying attention to this because she is a celebrity. I mean, forget black, white; it doesn't matter. Random guy at Occupy Wall Street, right, whatever his race or thing is, gets pushed, and he tweets out, "Oh my God, NYPD pushed me." People are like, "Yeah, so what?"
It's more relevant when a celebrity does it. And when Ellen Barkin says, "Get your motherfucking hands off me," it's hotter than when anybody else does it. Let's just say that. You know. So, and she's probably, you know, I feel for her because how badly she was treated by Daniel Stern in Diner when he yelled at her for replacing the alphabetical order of his record collection. You know, so she's, I don't always grasp reality that well, as you can tell. She's had a hard time.
So, Sharon, she also said afterwards, you know, it wasn't like, the cops weren't like this when I was growing up. And apparently she grew up in the Bronx, which I didn't know, right? But a lot of people said, hey, listen, when you were growing up, cops were a lot worse for some people in New York, right? And so it goes back to this point of privilege. So, I mean, how do you respond to that?
Well, in all fairness to her, we really can't expect her to understand or to know. I mean, she lives in a body that is treated with preference. She's a celebrity. She's young, she's attractive, she's thin, she's blonde. She's everything that American culture epitomizes as the best. So she's accustomed to being treated in a certain way. And in fact, I think that all Americans hold some privilege, varying degrees of privilege. I myself, as a woman, a black woman, but I myself as a woman am not treated the same as my son is treated by the police. I was once driving a car and I almost hit a pedestrian, and because I didn't see the pedestrian. And I was pulled over by the police, and as I was waiting for the officer to come and ask me for my license and registration, I could see him in my side mirror, and he had his hand on his gun. And he was pulling he was unlatching, pulling his gun out. And I thought to myself, he thinks I'm a guy, because I had a big jacket on, I had a hat, and I was driving a truck. And as soon as I rolled down the window and I said to the officer, "I'm sorry, officer, I realized I did something wrong," his entire body language changed. He relaxed, he took his hand off the gun, he didn't even end up giving me a ticket, and I definitely deserved one. So,
well, it has a happy ending, so that doesn't usually happen with us guys.
Another point is I was surrounded by a bunch of cops in San Francisco. Well, this one cop was super gung-ho, and I was waiting at the bus stop, and he pulled up, cross traffic, shined his lights on me, gets out of the car, asked me to put my hands up, and he calls, and all these other cops show up, and apparently there was someone, a black man, who was supposedly robbing houses, and I said, "What's the description?" They said, "A 6-foot-tall black man," and I said, "Anything else?" And they're like, "No," and so it's like, well, every black man's 6 foot tall, It just, but the point was, I was down there, and literally 4 cop cars surrounded me, and the bus that I usually take, I come back home from, was coming down the street, and my roommate was on it, my white roommate was on it, and he was coming down the street, and he said, after talking to him, he was sitting there going, "There's got to be, they must be hassling a black man down there," just seeing all these cops. And as he got closer, he was like, "Oh my God, that's my black man." Like and the bus rolls up, and he gets off the bus, and he comes running across traffic, against the light, and starts swearing and screaming at all these cops. And if he was a black man doing that, they would have been on him so quickly and beat the hell out of him. And instead, they were like, "Oh no, we've made a mistake. I think we've made a," like literally. I was shocked. I was like, "Oh my God!" Like I was telling him, like, "Dagan, take it easy, man. Take it easy,"
Right.
Like, it was white privilege defined right there.
That goes to a really interesting point. The people who have that privilege so often have no idea that they have it. Right. So, for example, right. There's many examples of this. One is in the case of police brutality. Another story that we covered on the Young Turks once. The son of a famous pitcher is in a Texas town. He's driving into his own driveway. Cops pull him over. He gets out of the house because he's going to go home. They shoot him, right? And they're like, "Well, how did we know he was here, right?" Like, whereas a white person does not get shot in his driveway, so he has no idea that you can get shot in your driveway as a black guy for being, in the wrong part of town, meaning the best part of town, right? And it extends to other things as well. So Vice President Gore and I were talking about this during the Iowa caucus coverage on Current, right? About education. So, for example, to your point, Sharon, we're all privileged, right? My dad was an olive farmer in the middle of southeastern Turkey. He had to bust his ass to get to a point where he can get a free education if he scored really, really high. I had the privilege of being able to take practice tests for the SATs, etc. But as a kid, I didn't realize that. And I thought, well, if I do this well, and the other kid doesn't do that well, then I should get the things. Let alone people like Romney, whose dad was a governor, and there's heritage in these schools, so that if your dad went, you get a much easier time. Is that one of the top problems here? That the problem is that white people don't know, and I'm just using that generally, it's true for a lot of us too in a lot of different circumstances, they don't know what other folks are going through, so it's hard for them to empathize.
That's right, that's right. I mean, you talked about the heritage in schools. It's affirmative action. That's what that is, but it's not called that.
Right.
No.
Like George W. Bush going to Yale, right, and to Harvard Business School, and not the brightest guy in the world. I'll just step on a limb and say that.
Yeah, and, the great line from Governor Ann Richards on that. George Bush was born on third and thought he hit a triple, and that perfectly describes exactly what we're talking about. And then as they're standing on third base, they're going, "What? Why didn't you hit a triple?"
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I don't want, my last point on this, I don't want anybody to get me wrong, right? I love that Ellen Barkin cares about this issue. I like that she brought it forward. I'm on her side. I just wanted to have a general conversation about the idea of privilege, and so that everybody can begin to empathize with what we're describing.
Also, whenever there's a protest movement, it seems like there's always police brutality always comes. So you have to be kind of aware of that happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, and the police are part of the 99%. And I wish sometimes that they would act that way, but of course in New York, for example, Raymond Kelly gets fancy parties thrown for him by J.P. Morgan and some of the other big funders of his police association. So he sends the orders, make sure you look out for my boys at J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs. And unfortunately, that's how the world goes around.